Have you ever been a fan of a setting and then whether it's a game or there's a show or whatever it is, right? You're a fan of a setting that actively gets stuff added to it, and you have a wish list of what you hope would happen, but you never think it will, and then it comes to pass, and not only does it happen, but it exceeds your expectations. It's rare, but that happens, and for me, that's Mechwarrior 5 Clans. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do a video on it here on this channel because I tend to, in the few videos that I've done, um, with more coming, speak about the tech and stuff from the setting and the lore of it, and even compare it to some real life stuff and overanalyze and deep dive, and not talk about the game, right? But I'm impressed at MechWarrior 5 Clans and I want to talk about it. So hopefully you'll indulge me. And that's what we're going to do here. So strap yourself in, prepare for drop. I'm James. Welcome to Mechanical Mayhem. This is going to be a thoughts, review, reflection, ramble style of video, and there will be spoilers ahoy, basically. I will directly be discussing some aspects of the campaign itself, so there will be spoilers in that capacity, and I will be referencing the fact that this is fully spelled out already. Everything that goes down major event-wise, we've known to exist. So there's your other potential spoiler if you go digging yourself. But you've been warned multiple times now, spoilers ahead, so be prepared. I totally understand if you want to wait till you get your gameplay experience finished or even just started before you watch this, so I get it, but just be aware, spoilers. Alright, so to set the stage real quick, I am a fan of Battletech. It's my favorite mecha setting. It's the king of mech-based stuff to me. And as far as sci-fi settings go, it's one of my favorites, period. It's, I think, a really good setting. It's a hidden gem. It's a jewel that's in the shadows, and you have to seek it out, and then you have to do your own kind of self-education with it, as it were. But I know there are people that will become big fans of the setting if they only knew it existed and took the time to learn it. And I know this from having been in gaming stores talking, with other players of a certain game. Let's say like Warhammer 40k, when I went out and did, gaming with that at the miniature wargaming stores, and you just talk with people, just based on how the conversation goes, you get a feel of, oh, they might like certain X, Y, or Z setting, and I can, tell that in terms of Battletech with the way certain people talk about stuff, but I don't get evangelical on them, so I just leave it alone. But my point is that it's one of those settings that if only it was more well-known and mainstream, I think a lot of people would flock to it. And that is my hope, that it does kind of get a resurgence, but we'll see. In any case, that's a little bit of setting the stage for me in regards to Battletech. I've been a fan of this since a kid, since the early 90s, when I was old enough as a kid to start actually playing video games and understanding what I was doing and making connections. So, with that said, I quickly learned about the clans in Battletech, became a fan of the clans, and I learned Clan Smoke Jaguar was a thing, and became an instant fan of Clan Smoke Jaguar. So, here we are, in 2024, late 2024, Mechwarrior 5 Clans is released. And this is the first time in nearly 30 years that we got a story-driven game for the clans, again. So A, that makes me feel old. B, that's kind of crazy when you think about it, because we had other games. It's all been Inner Sphere focused. So, that's pretty cool. So now we set that kind of stage a bit. How's the game feel? Some impressions. I gotta tell you this. I've played every official Mechwarrior title. That includes Mechwarrior 1, which was kind of a hard play. I played it for a little bit. But I played all of the games. All the Mechwarrior titles. And I played, other video games for the Battletech setting as well. But we're just focusing on Mechwarrior here. And this game is the most story-focused, driven, cinematic feeling Mechwarrior game out there. Obviously, the earlier games had limitations of the hardware, right? The machinery to run them wouldn't be able to handle, the sheer amount of cutscenes that we have. And therefore, they tell a lot of their story in text space there. So you still have a narrative, and you still have lore and stuff that you're learning, but the game itself, it just requires you to read it. and therefore it doesn't feel quite as cinematic, and it's not as story driven cinematic wise like that. Can you skip these cinematics? You can, but you're a monster because these are fantastic cinematics to at least experience for the first time, and almost every time. But with that said, it's a really story driven game, like hard. And that's good because it helps you get acclimated to the story if you're newer to it, especially if you're newer to the whole clan concept. Because for a lot of players out there, this might be their first experience of story driven clan content in Battletech. So, being that it's so cinematic and story focused is going to be helpful because clan culture and the lore of the Battletech universe and everything is pretty different from the Inner Sphere. They have their own terms and words, and even if you don't know what they literally mean, you get a good context clue that, oh, that's a bad word, or that's whatever, or that's an insult, and stuff like that. So, I really appreciate the attention to detail and the real focus on storytelling that they put into this game because, it's the first time we've seen the clans in 30 years. Let's get the full hurrah going on, and we really do. Or nearly 30 years where we get to actually be the clans, like I said. So, yeah, it's Smoke Jaguar, my favorite clan, but I would have been equally interested and excited, honestly, if it was any of the other original invading clans, which is Wolf, Jade Falcon, or Ghost Bear. Because it's been so long since we had clan activity like that. Now, with that said, the game itself plays great. This isn't the first Mechwarrior game that we've had in a long time. We had Mechwarrior 5 Mercenaries with stuff coming out, I think, even this year for it. I think. I could be wrong. And we have, before that, Mechwarrior Online, which is still supported and everything else. So this generation of Mechwarrior gaming, you could say, has had plenty of setup and refinement and polish happen to it. And as such, when you have all of that set up and then you make a whole new game like Mechwarrior 5 Clans, it's going to feel really tight and really well done, and it does. This is a simulator game. Now, it's nowhere near as crazy as some of the sims out there, for example, like flight sims, racing sims, or even space exploration sims that are out there. Some of them get really intense, really crazy, and the rigs people make for those games are pretty intense as well. If I knew how to do stuff like that, I would be highly tempted to make my own cockpit pod for Battletech. No lie. Totally would. Anyway. While this doesn't have that same nuance of simulation level of detail as those crazy simulators that are out there, it's still a simulator game. And as such, the player base is going to be a little bit more refined into either being a fan of that style of gameplay or dabblers that will come and go as they please, which is fine. It's different from something, let's say, like an action slash game, third person or first person shooter style games, where your more dabbler casual fan base will stick around for longer and for longer periods of time. You either become a fan or are a fan of this style of gameplay in terms of simulators, just like with fighters and you could say strategy games, or you dabble and then you bounce and maybe you come back. So it's a bit of a different, I would say, player-based beast in a sense, to a degree. Just as an FYI. But it feels good. Obviously, we don't have real mechs to compare it to, but it's a mech simulator game for the Battletech universe, and it feels really good. These mechs lumber, and they stomp their way to victory. They feel their weight classes. The war gear feels good. Everything just feels really good. And this comes from having years of time to hone and tune it in their game engine setup through the other games. So that's great. Visually, it's fantastic. It's a stunning looking game. The cinematics are glorious. It's probably the best the cinematics have looked from this company, and that's a job well done. I could watch animated shorts like this all day. Like, it's done so well. Like, if they made a series of animated shorts in the Battletech universe, doesn't matter what factions they were featuring, I'd watch it. It just looks that good. So, job well done there. I think the soundscape is also well done. The weakest part of the soundscape would be the voice acting. It's still fine. I would say 95% of all the dialogue, all the unique dialogue in this game is great. there's only like 5%, maybe even less, where I feel like, you probably could have redone that line a little better and a little differently. But that's nitpick a little bit. Maybe that was the intention for the line to kind of feel kind of flat and emotionless or whatever, and I get it. And those type of lines tend to give off the vibe of maybe we could have redone that, but their intention is to be that way. But also, nitpicking voice acting in a game like this is kind of unnecessary, but also I think a good sign. Because if that's where you're focusing the nitpick, then the game's doing pretty well for itself, I would hope. But yeah, even that, the soundscape in general doesn't matter. It's fantastic. I think they really knocked it out of the park. This feels like the Battletech universe, which is what you want out of your Mechwarrior games and all of your Battletech video game stuff. You want it to feel like it's the universe, and it really does. So before we get into spoiler territory for realsies, let's talk multiplayer. That's right, I want to talk multiplayer. We have co-op for the campaign, up to 5 people total, which I think is a lofty goal for co-op period in games, and would be a fun experience. I would love to have 4 people to play with that are fans of the game and everything else, and fans of the setting and all that, and to go in and just wreck face with voice comms and everything. That'd be glorious. But that's definitely I think a tall order for a lot of us. So we have that. But I want to talk multiplayer, like player versus player type of multiplayer, which is all the rage for a lot of people these days, because this game doesn't have it. But the Mechwarrior generational of gaming, this generation of Mechwarrior 5 gaming, you could say, does sort of have it. It's clunky, but I think it's also better this way. Now, admittedly, I don't know if it's only for PC or not, but we have Mechwarrior Online, and Mechwarrior Online started the whole Mechwarrior 5 generation of gaming, really. And there's a whole reason for that. We're not going to get into that here, why this came out first and whatever, but it did. And this is where we saw mech redesigns for the first time, for the clans and Intersphere stuff. It all came out here first in Mechwarrior Online, which is why it's not too surprising to see how the mechs look in Mechwarrior 5 clans. Just they're that much tighter, visually well done, which is great. So, okay, we have Mechwarrior 5 clans and Mechwarrior 5 mercenaries that owe a lot of mech design and feeling everything to Mechwarrior Online, which came out first. Mechwarrior Online is a full standalone game. It's free to play with microtransactions and whatever else. The point is, though, that's your multiplayer. And it's clunky because it's not attached to Mechwarrior 5 mercenaries or Mechwarrior 5 clans here. So you wouldn't necessarily know it existed if you didn't look for it or if it wasn't advertised. And one thing that I think they could do, at least for the PC side of things, because I don't know, again, if you can play Mechwarrior Online on consoles, but at least for the PC side of things, they should do a little bit of a patch that introduces an extra button to press in the main title menu. And that button should say, Learn About Multiplayer. And when you click it, it should be just a little bit of an advertisement for Mechwarrior Online, explaining what it is and that it's free to play. Because this is your multiplayer. It's just a little clunkier because, again, it's its own standalone game that you have to get out of clans and then go into Mechwarrior Online and log in and do that. The reason I say it's better is because their total focus when it comes to Mechwarrior Online is just multiplayer. There's a lot of mech chassis to choose from. You're not limited to just choosing clan. You can choose Intersphere if you wanted to, right? And vice versa. So that's cool. There's a lot more of them. There's a lot of customizing and a lot of cool designs and a lot of things going on, bundles and just the whole 9 yards in terms of multiplayer experience. It's much more catered to and supported because that's all it is. And it can do that without worry about a single player side of things. And Mechwarrior 5 mercenaries, in this case clans, gets to focus fully on their single player experience. So you get the best of both worlds because you have 2 different worlds, 2 different games. It's just not as seamless as a game that has multiplayer as a part of it. But now you know, in case you were curious. So lastly, let's wrap things up in terms of a little bit about the story. So there's spoilers here, and then some wishlist items for the future, because I do think we're going to see future content. So story-wise, there's not much I can say to spoil things that isn't going to be spoiled if you start looking into the clan invasion story, especially the clan Smoke Jaguar's corridor of invasion. because every big event that is talked about is basically covered in this game. Either directly we get to play it, or we get a cutscene, for example, when it involves Clan Wolf's flagship. So, all those big events are covered in the game, which is really cool. So Turtle Bay and the Bonding of Edo, all that's covered, right? Corcheval and Luthien, it's all covered. Up to Luthien, and that's where the campaign ends. The one thing I was hoping against hope to not happen, but I knew even before I logged in for the first time, or opened the game for the first time when it first launched, I knew we were going to see defection. I just felt it in my bones, because this is clans, and it just feels like when you have the clans, you kind of are obligated to have the potential for defection, and I just didn't want it to happen. And it's not because Clan Smoke Jaguar is my favorite clan, and I didn't want that to be a part of it. We could have been playing Jade Falcon, Wolf, or Ghost Bear, and I wouldn't have wanted a defecting thing either. But we got it. But I think they handled it well. It didn't sour the experience at all. Overall, I enjoyed the entirety of the gaming experience. But if we didn't get to choose, if it was forced on us, that definitely, in my opinion, would have soured the story. Thankfully, they didn't do that. My biggest hope was that if we did have defection, we wouldn't have to make a choice. We'd be with Clan Smoke Jaguar, and we would just crush it. Instead, we get the obligatory, you get a choice, defect or not defecting. And, of course, Clan Smoke Jaguar is life, so I just stuck with the clan. That's what you do. But they put that choice in there. But I think they did it tactfully, because it's the very last mission that you had to make this choice on Corcheval. And then you have Luthien, which is the very last place to go in the campaign period. Now, I don't know if there are extra missions past that or anything on the defecting side, because I'm not defecting. But I doubt it. So it doesn't impact much of the game at all. It's just one of those things where I would have preferred we didn't get this, but it almost feels kind of obligatory to have that option in there at this point. So I can understand why they did it. I just would have preferred it to not be that way. So there's that. But I think it was handled well. Let me make it clear. I didn't want to see it because I didn't want to see it. It was done well, though. I don't think they did a bad job with it. I just didn't want to see it personally. But we got it. What I hope we get fleshed out some more is the Demi Presenter from Comstar. I don't trust her. I didn't trust her from the beginning, and I don't think we're supposed to trust her. But that didn't really go anywhere. And I think that's a slow burn thing, that if we get extra content surrounding Cobalt Star and Smoke Jaguar, we'll see maybe develop, maybe. But likewise, we'll have to wait and see. So that's the only thing about the story that I just wasn't the biggest fan of, but it didn't sour anything at all, right? For me, all I did was use the mech repair base, and then I went immediately to stick with Clan Smoke Jaguar. I didn't even hesitate. So, that's me though. I guess if you wanted to defect, you could. And I understand the reasonings. I think story-wise, they handled it well. I just would have preferred it not to be there. Outside of that, it was really cool to see Turtle Bay and Edo and go through Luthien, even though we know how it ends and everything. It's just cool to see the how and experience the how firsthand. Wishlist items for the future. I would love to see more content for this game happen. Mechwarrior 5 Mercenaries has a lot of content that came out for it, so I am hopeful that Mechwarrior 5 Clans will follow suit. The difference here is that with the clans, I feel like you have to potentially do some stuff for more than one clan. It's called clans after all. And I suspect while we definitely could have, especially if the canon is that Dark Commander Jaden sticks to Clan Smoke Jaguar, which I hope is a canon, because it should be. If that's the case, then you definitely have room for more Smoke Jaguar development in terms of content. But even if it is, I can totally get behind them doing some Nova Cat story stuff. We never had the ability to play as Nova Cat, or even one of the other kind of lesser known clans out there would be pretty cool. Or straight up remaster more or less Mechwarrior 2 or Mechwarrior 2 Ghost Bear's Legacy campaign in here, so you get to, let's say, play as Clan Ghost Bear and go through Clan Ghost Bear's Legacy's story pretty much. I don't know if they have legal cause to be able to do that, but if they do, I'm all for that, honestly. make an expansion, call it Ghost Bear's Legacy, make it basically be a redo of that game in this engine with this setup and capability, I'd be all over it. Even though I'm Clans Mode Jaguar fan, that would be totally cool to see. So there's a lot of potential here for them to do additional content with. It's just how big of a content do they want to do? What are their plans? And hopefully the game is successful enough to warrant those plans reaching fruition. So, wish list wise though, I would love to see that. And then what I would really like to see is instant action come back. We have quasi instant action in the training simulators in the SimPod, and we have the SimPod to replay through prior campaign missions, which is really cool. We didn't really get that ability in other Mechwarrior games. In order to play through the campaign missions, you had to replay the campaign, more or less. So here you get to re-experience them, and you can use whatever mechs you have at your disposal as long as you fit the weight drop limit, which is really neat. So that's very cool. And we have quasi-instant action, but I would love to see an update to the SimPod for full-blown instant action. And what that is you pick the map, make it day or night, you pick the enemy mechs, how many you want to face, what they are, and then you pick your mech, and if you have any allies with you, you pick their mechs, and you just duke it out. It's kind of like a quick hit, right, of mech combat. It doesn't last very long. It's just a fun little quick brawler thing, and then you're done, and you can do it again, or you can just go about your business. And that's cool because these missions are lengthy. Most all of them. So you don't always have time to just replay a mission. And sometimes you don't want to have to worry about mission stuff. You just want to duke it out or just play around with the mech. Now, granted, the simulator training stuff lets you do that, but instant action would just be cool to have come back and blatantly called instant action and all that jazz. So that's a wish list thing. And then, of course, I'm really eager to see future content, because with future content, it's going to bring more mech designs, which is always cool. So we'll see what happens. In any case, that's all I got for you here. Thanks for indulging me. If you watched this video, let me know in the comments if you play Mechwarrior 5 Clans. And if you're a Battletech fan, let me know your favorite faction. Doesn't matter what it is. Let me know in the comment section. I hope you hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like if you feel you need to. All that algorithm stuff that you've heard ad nauseum all over YouTube, I'm not going to just spell it out again here. You know what to do. You're smart people. So, thanks so much for tuning in and stopping by. Until the next one, take care.